I think my message to someone who's struggling today would be, I see you, I hear you, want to encourage you not to be alone in that struggle. I'm Beth Brannon. I'm the Senior Director for Mental Health and Addictions at Lakeridge Health. I am a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm an ally, I'm a friend, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here. One of the things that I think has really influenced who I am now in terms of my role, when I was very young in my early school years, it became really clear that I learned in a different way than other kids did. And I have multiple learning disabilities and spent a lot of time, particularly in elementary school and somewhat through high school, trying to learn different ways to learn things. I kind of have an unconventional path, I would say. So when I was 17, we had a family friend who worked at what was then Whitby Psychiatric Hospital. That was a long time ago. And it was a provincial psychiatric hospital, and the person said, "Hey, you looking for a summer job? What do you think of coming and working here?" And I said, "Okay, I'll apply," and went through that process. So my first introduction to mental health formally came at a provincial psychiatric hospital. I was so lucky to have that experience for a couple of different reasons. First of all, the team that I worked with then absolutely recognized that I was this kid who really didn't know anything about mental health and addictions and didn't know a whole lot about care processes or any of those things. And they were the kindest, most wonderful people who taught me about the power of a conversation and the power of being able to just sit down with somebody and see who they are, find out about their story, and I think that has served me so well throughout my career, my relationships. Had that introduction at 17, and if I link that back to the learning disability kind of thing, which I think made me really curious about how minds work and how we build ideas. Certainly being in a provincial psychiatric hospital at that time gave me the opportunity to meet people I would never normally meet. So people with dementias and people with developmental disorders and people with serious mental illness and people with addictions. And it just all made me really curious about minds. And, early on I thought I wanted to be a teacher and that was what I would do, and ended up landing in nursing instead, which was a big shift. Yeah, so I went into nursing, and continued to work at what was then Whitby Mental Health Center, finished my RNs at Durham College, and so this is so lovely. And then I started to work at both Lakeridge and Whitby Mental Health Center, and I got really involved quickly at Whitby Mental Health Center around leadership opportunities, and was the first co-chair of their nursing council, and had an opportunity just to kind of keep on growing there in a different way, and it became pretty quickly clear that was my place. Worked there for several years. Some of my most favorite experiences there were as a frontline staff, working either, I worked with individuals who had developmental challenges as well as serious mental illness, and I learned so much from them. And one of my favorite things that I learned from that population was the joy I felt in making a difference in a person's day. And I think that's something that as healthcare workers, we all need to stay tapped into and to stay connected to that purpose. So I worked there for a while. I worked with people who had serious mental illness, decided I really loved leadership and went back to school to do my undergrad in psychology, and did that, and then got an opportunity to go into formal leadership and worked with an assertive community treatment team in the community, and absolutely loved it, loved community. And over the course of a lot of years at what is now Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences, had an opportunity to lead in almost every program, and either as a manager or as a director, and just continued to grow and learn there. While I was there, I had an incredible mentor who really encouraged me to go back and get my master's. And she was phenomenal and taught me every day about the importance of being fearless and the importance of making a change and being the difference that I wanted to see. And, you know, fast forward a few years, there's a global pandemic. I think the pandemic absolutely highlighted many things for us, and the social determinants of health on the one hand were extremely influenced by the pandemic, and on the other hand, I'm very pleased that we have an awareness, a growing awareness of social determinants now that I think is changing. I think I'm even more proud of how the mental health and addictions world is trying so hard to step up now to meet the need that's grown out of that pandemic. You know, we saw so much loneliness and isolation and division, and I'm really proud of where we're coming out now, and had an opportunity to come to Lakeridge and try out something new, and here I am today. We know that there's lots of things that influence our health around things like genetics and, you know, overall health and kind of our bodies and those kind of things. Social determinants of health are the things that are outside of that. So they could be things like where you live, how you grow up, what you can afford, education. So there are all kinds of things that are outside of us, but they really deeply impact our health. And in mental health and addictions, they become very layered. And I think we now, coming out of the pandemic, there was this time of economic uncertainty that has continued to become more and more and more challenging. So we're seeing crises now that were always there, but in a much more significant way. So around homelessness, around food security, around access to care. And I think all of those things are just components of social determinants that can make maintenance of good health incredibly challenging. Concurrent disorders are really, to me, it's a really fascinating topic because it's kind of bringing together mental health together with addictions, and certainly in, you know, in Canada we call them concurrent disorders. I think in other places they'll call them like a dual diagnosis. So when we're talking about concurrent disorders here, we're really referring to mental health as well as addictions. And they're two things that go hand in hand in a really interesting way that make treatment super complex. You know, about 50% of individuals who have addictions also have mental health challenges, and probably about 20 to 30% of people who have mental health challenges also struggle with substance use disorders in addiction. So when we see those two things together, it can really create a complexity in how we care for people. And that complexity is both in terms of an approach to the individual, but I would say it's also quite structural, particularly in Canada and in Ontario, where we kind of have two systems that work side by side, and we sometimes struggle with how we bring them together around a person. And I think we're doing a better job of that now than we used to, and recognizing that, but I think when you continue to try and treat either one in a silo, we miss the opportunity to treat the person and to come around that person and try and treat the two things together. And that's that concurrent approach. You know, when I talked about the silo between mental health and the silo with addictions, I think there are additional silos that exist that make treatment and the opportunity to wrap around somebody and what their needs are challenging. I'm super proud of the work we're doing in this region to try and break down those silos and to really take away barriers and to leave the burden of breaking down those silos with us versus with the person in need. And we've got a long way to go. I think we have a long way to go in this region, certainly within our organization, everywhere. I think is to be very challenged to try and meet the needs of the person at the center. But what we often see in mental health and addiction is a layering. So you'll see that individual who may be struggling with mental health challenges. They may be struggling with an addiction, but they're also struggling with affordability. And they're also struggling with stigma. And they're also struggling with access to care. So I just think it's becoming so layered right now across the system that we have to just, I feel as though we have to just take away the silos and just be really focused relentlessly on the person and doing what we can to try and wrap around the person and eliminating some of those challenges. I think mental health and addictions care providers are in the same position as most healthcare providers right now. I think we had a workforce towards the end of the pandemic that felt somewhat devalued and unappreciated. And I think it was a workforce that felt that on top of gross fatigue and moral distress. And I don't know that our workforce has really recovered from that. And I think we see that in all areas of healthcare. We certainly see it in mental health and addictions as well. So I think that ability for our healthcare workers to be deeply connected to their purpose and their passion has just been really taxed over the last several years. And I think sometimes how we see that play out is around burnout and around a fatigue for learning. And it's really hard because sometimes that's the thing that will help you to come out on the other side. So, you know, I'm proud of the work that I've seen done at Lakeridge. I'm proud of the work we've seen done in the province around really trying to lean into our healthcare workers and helping them to recover. I think the other thing that really played out from the pandemic was a really significant demand that we've not seen before, both around mental health and around addictions. And I think that ability to respond to the demand has been extraordinarily challenging, and I think has further hurt many of our healthcare workers who can look and see the population that needs them so desperately. I would love to have a wand of kindness and compassion, and I would love to be able to use that wand to help to heal some of the hurts that I see in our healthcare workforce. I would love to be able to use that wand to wrap around the people who just desperately need a little more kindness and compassion in how the world is treating them right now. And I think our world needs a little more kindness and compassion. We're in a tough space right now, and I would love to be able to use that wand to make our world a better place. So for healthcare workers, for our social service workers, for our addictions workers, I think my hope would be for them to stay deeply connected to that passion and purpose. Think back to those early days for why you went into this work. What was the change you wanted to see? So that connection to purpose, I think, and that connection to the joy that it can bring to the work that you do every day. Stay connected to people who are like-minded. Stay connected to the positive, and be relentless in pursuing that change. I think it's really easy to get tired and really easy to get discouraged. We know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and I think we have to lean into that power around hope. It's essential in all we do. I think if we have lost that light, it makes it really hard to bring that light out in someone else. And I think when we're dealing with individuals who are really struggling to find the light, if it's not there and we don't show it up and allow it to come out, and I think sometimes when we're tired, we actually armor it up and don't let people see it. It can be very freeing, and I think it can be very healing for us to continue to believe in what's possible. So I think my message to someone who's struggling today would be, I see you, I hear you. There are many of us who see you and hear you, and I want to encourage you not to be alone in that struggle. I know that many individuals will put their hands up, will ask for help, will feel like they just kind of get knocked down in that by a system that's complicated and complex and hard to figure out. Please don't let that be the barrier. And I'm talking to when I say this, I'm talking to our healthcare workers, I'm talking to folks who have mental health challenges, folks who have addictions challenges. I'm talking to the person who's sitting at home and saying, oh my gosh, this whole world feels so uncertain right now. Reach out. Find someone to help you to champion through that process. And it can come from lots of different places. It can come from a church. It can come from a friend. It can come from a mental health provider. It can come from an addictions provider. It can come from an elder. It can come from a community leader. Just don't be alone in that struggle. Continue to reach out. Something different is possible. And sometimes the things that are super, super hard are the things that make us the strongest.